Welcome back to the Balancing Act podcast. I'm Andy Temte. On the Balancing Act, we talk to business leaders and industry experts to explore the balancing acts we play in our professional lives and learn about the events that put rocket boosters behind their career success. Today, we have Bose Akadiri joining us. Bose is a motivational keynote speaker, corporate trainer, and the founder and CEO of Goal and Grind LLC, a speaking and corporate training practice. Before Goal and Grind, she spent years leading corporate social responsibility work at the Boeing company, Salesforce, and JPMorgan Chase. All really, really big jobs. And she's the author of the recently released, and Bose, hold up the coffee mug right now, the recently released The Stay Joyful Method, Using Joy as a Tool to Rise, Lead, and Redefine Success. Welcome to the show, Bose.
Thank you so much, Andy. I'm really glad to be here with you, not only because I enjoy listening to your show, but also because you're just really good people. And I like being in conversation with good people.
Well, I like good people, and you are as well. So, Bose, I'm still reeling from the fact that I get to say the word bossy in the context of a guest. So listeners will have to just put up with my surprise every time it comes out of my mouth. But give us the elevator pitch version of your story.
Yes. So I'm an Oklahoma girl turned Chicago woman. I moved here 12 years ago with what I called a joy-driven life strategy. And what that means is I moved with no job, no network, but I had a plan. I knew exactly what I wanted to do, both the pivots that I wanted to make in my personal life and my professional life. And once I did those things, a lot of people started asking, how did this girl from Oklahoma show up here and end up working at multiple Fortune 500 companies? And my response was always very simple, is I let joy lead my path. I knew what type of work I wanted to do. I knew what type of work I was meant to do. And I just needed to be in a place where I could flourish and really make an impact. So that's why I started Goal and Grind, so I could help others tap into their joy, not as a fluff, but as a resource for them, their community, and the teams that they lead. And that's what I get to do now.
That is awesome. So I'm hearing that purpose and joy might be connected, and let's explore that a little bit more as we go on. But what's a key accelerant for your career? Yeah, you moved from Oklahoma to Chicago, but was there a moment that you can identify for us where things just really started to take off for you?
Definitely. And I will say a key accelerant, even before I moved, was I think the formidable time whenever I was an undergrad. So I studied abroad twice during my undergraduate year. And at the risk of aging myself, that was before social media, that was before Facebook was invented, that was before the smartphones. And so I really learned in my 20s how to be in an environment that was very unknown to me, that was very different than what I'm used to. And it gave me this insatiable thirst and desire, not only to get to know others, but it gave me a comfort with it as well. So every transition that I've made in my career, whether I fully understood what the next outcome was, I knew that I was prepared for it because I had that backing of the flexibility, of the curiosity. And it worked every time that I went to a different company. The key was you need to be able to get to know people, not just in your department, but across different functions and across the ocean even, because as you
Yeah.
saw, all the companies I worked at were global. So
Yeah.
that I believe was a key accelerator.
Yeah, yeah. Relationships are so important. And to learn that in your early 20s, I do wish that more undergrads and folks that aren't going to college, even, that they focus at an early age on relationship development and management. Bose, tell us about Goal and Grind. What's the company's it factor? What differentiates Goal and Grind from the sea of leadership development firms out there?
That's a great question, Andy. So the big thing with Goal and Grind is as it was being developed, it's very research based. And so we're not teaching people how to push harder. We're teaching people how to lead better and lead from a place of joy. So we're starting with joy, not as a feel good bonus at the end of a quarter, but more of a foundation
Hmm.
as individuals are setting their goals, as the company is building its brand, and as leaderships are leading their team. So we're really building the business case for joy. So you're probably wondering, what does that look like in practice? And what it looks like is 3 module workshops that a lot of my clients, they'll either do one of the workshops or they'll do all 3. And it starts with the individual. How are we not just talking about dreams, but actually pursuing them in meaningful ways that integrate with the organization? And then once that individual is really comfortable and set with what they're doing, how are they becoming a magnet for the type of community, both internally and externally to the organization, that elevates in a very authentic way because they have those goals built on their joy? And then that third level is once you become a leader, when you have that understanding of your joy driven goals, of the community that you've built around you that has clarity because you've done it from a place of excitement and joy, and you can lead and create plans that are not just a win for yourself, but for your team and the organization, which is what I like to call a triple win.
Yeah.
So I love it. And I have a lot of case studies in my book where people can see that it's really worked to empower individual dreams, elevate teams, and transform organizations, leveraging joy.
That's great. I'm really interested to see, how you progress, because framing joy as really as a skill set to leverage in your career is a really interesting twist. So I'll be keenly interested in that. Now, Bossy, you spent years leading corporate social responsibility at some of the biggest companies in the world, and you started building Goal and Grind. You're thinking about it, but yeah, but walk our listeners through the pivot from these big companies to Goal and Grind. What did your corporate years teach you and shape, and how did it shape the methodology?
Okay, so I'm going to answer this 2-part because I'm hearing what was the journey and then also what did it teach me. So
Yeah.
I'll talk about the journey first. And myself, I'm very strategic. And what I mean by that is I believe that I'm continuously growing and I need a plan for that growth. It's not just going to happen. Like I need to be in charge of my future and take it where I want it to go. So as I was starting Goal and Grind, yes, I was hearing from folks that we want to understand how you've done what you've done in your life and in your career. So every time I would work with someone individually or in groups, I surveyed and I took that data and I used it. It did not just sit stagnant. I took it and I used it to elevate the workshops. I take it and I use it every time that I'm speaking. So, like, for example, recently I spoke at SHRM, a global conference.
Mhm.
And somebody wrote in the comments that they loved how I taught them the network, but they wanted AI inclusion. So a month later, when I spoke at ATD, Association for Talent Development, their global conference, I incorporated how you can use AI to research before you go into a networking event, such as a conference. And so from the inception of Goal and Grind 6 years ago, while I was still in corporate, I was surveying, I was strategically making different moves. And that's how I was able to really fine tune these methodologies.
Yeah. Yeah, Bossy, you can, I find you can predict the future. Um, but predicting the future and your future path takes a lot of foresight, a lot of planning. Yeah, and of course, things can come in from the side and disrupt you, the economy, social change, whatever. But you can predict your own path pretty carefully with education, training, planning. But it takes real work, and you've put in that work. It's super interesting. Let's go back to, when I think of Boeing, Salesforce, and JPMorgan Chase, joy isn't the first thing that comes to mind, right? The big companies, lots of layers of management.
Yeah.
The average person listening to this isn't connecting joy to
Right.
those brands. So how did did you just like create your own? Before the show, you talked about this thing called a joy bubble. Did you just create your own joy bubble and go through those environments in your own joy bubble?
Yes and no. I think the important thing to remember about my path is that when I was at those companies, I was doing what I call a company agnostic job. So you could really go anywhere and do corporate social responsibility
Hmm.
if the company was investing. And so my strategy was always about doing work that I enjoyed. And so I knew that I could do that at different types of companies. Now, what I'll say about corporate is that I'm a firm believer that before you're ready for the main stage, you need to spend time backstage. So I think about my time at Boeing as being so pivotal because I was taking project management classes that were internal right alongside with the folks that are engineers building airplanes. And so my project management skills and understanding of that just catapulted because I wouldn't have had that sort of experience anywhere else, and I'm very grateful for it. I also, because I was leading teams where we were creating global strategies and I wasn't just working in the US, it forced me again to really have that lens of what what's the environment like in different parts of the world within the same organization, and how do I create programs that people will be excited to participate in even when I've never been to the country where they live, I've never sat where they sat. So it really helped me to understand stakeholder engagement, project management, and one of the biggest things is also presentations. You know, there were several times when I would be representing those companies externally. And so a lot of what I learned in corporate to me was about preparing myself while I was backstage. And now I'm main stage as a CEO myself.
Yeah. Well, I hope our listeners really take that phrase to heart because it's really resonating with me. I'm a performer. Most of my listeners know that. And yeah, before you take the main stage, you got to spend time backstage. Awesome, awesome phrase. Before we cut to our obligatory break, Bossy, tell us about the book, The Stay Joyful Method, using joy as a tool to rise, lead, and redefine success that recently came out. Tell us about the book, and if you met a random reader on the street, what would you want their unaided recall of their experience to be?
Definitely, Andy. So this book is for that high achiever that they feel like they've checked every box, but something still isn't right. You know, that's where I was when I moved from Oklahoma to Chicago. I had a great job. I had a great community, one that people were thriving for and were trying to get. But I just didn't feel in my heart and soul that this was where I was meant to be for the rest of my life.
Hmm.
So it's for that high achiever that is aching for more. It's also for that leader who's very talented and driven, but they can't quite seem to get their team on the same page. And so there's entire chapters in the book about what are you doing at your offsite? How are you making sure that your team's speaking the same language internally and externally so that work is moving forward? Right. So it's for the individual, it's for the leader, but it's really about giving people a strategic framework for joy as a tool to rise in their career, to lead with authenticity, and to redefine what success really means for them. And I wanted to do this book because it's not aware to me that not every person is gonna be working at a company that will be bringing me in. So I really wanted to have accessibility with this book so that others
Yeah.
would be able to see it. So I'm very proud to say it's in libraries, you know, it's available at your independent bookstores across the nation. It's uh, it's really very available. And so I want to emphasize your last question on this part. If I meet a random stranger, which I actually have recently, I met a woman on a plane, and she told me she had her book in her shopping cart, and I thought, "Wow, this is amazing." Someone I've never met. I just,
Yep.
you know, she was sitting next to me on my 6 a.m. flight. And the big thing that I want people to take away is not just inspiration, because inspiration fades. I want them to be able to say, "This book made me realize that I might be measuring life by the wrong ruler." And now my new ruler is joy. And I want them to realize they have permission to actually use joy and go after it. And so what that means is in the book, I intentionally placed joy jumpstarts at the end of each chapter. And it's like a 20-second read and about a 5 to 10 minute activity because the book is not something just to read and forget about. It's a new way of living.
Yeah. Awesome. Bossy, we're going to take a really short commercial break and we'll be right back to talk about joy as a strategic advantage. Want to understand money, markets, and the economy to make better financial decisions? I'm Andy Temte. Join me every Saturday morning for Money Lessons with Andrew Temte on YouTube or your favorite podcast streaming service. And we're back with Bose Akadiri talking about joy as a strategic advantage and the work of building it into how we lead. Bossy, for a lot of leaders, the word joy still sounds like a nice to have. It's a perk. It's the occasional pizza party rather than a serious lever for performance and retention. You make the case that joy is strategy and not fluff. We're going to have some skeptical leaders listening right now who want results. How do you make the business case for joy in the language they'll actually use on the job?
Definitely, Andy. So this is one of my favorite questions. I love, love, love it because this book is definitely for the skeptical reader. And because I know how to meet people where they are, and that's where the numbers are, right? And I think when you're looking, not I think, I know when you're looking at the numbers, it's not just a short-term game, it's a long-term game that you're looking at within a company. So if you take, for example, a study that I referenced in the book from BCG, there are two main motivational blockers when people do not have joy at work. The first one is the lack of motivation to stay, and the second one is the sense of feeling supported. These tie directly to retention. So that's why I go back to and I say to the folks who are skeptical about this is, do you care about retention? That same study also found that people who don't have joy in the workplace are 49% more likely to be looking for outside employment. 49%. That's essentially half of your workforce after they've been there for a year looking for outside employment. If you want to put a plug in retention issues, you'll have to be looking at how are your leaders leading in a way that shows that it's okay to enjoy your work. I think we really need to dispel this myth that work is not meant to be something that's enjoyed. I enjoy my work now, but I also enjoyed my work when I was at Boeing, Salesforce, and JPMorgan because I was doing work that I enjoyed. And I also would challenge these leaders to think about when they're sitting in interviews and they're interviewing candidates, do they get more excited about hiring the candidate that is talking about not only what they'll bring to the job, but why they'll enjoy it? Or do they get more excited about the candidate who's just sitting there answering the questions? It seems like they're being forced to be there.
Yeah.
You
Yeah. I've got this. I've got this. No fun suckers allowed. Right?
exactly.
Somebody's sucking the joy out of the room. Like, no. Different mindset.
Right. And so when you really get to the core of it, it's not a morale issue. It's not a fluff piece. It's actually a revenue problem that's tied directly to retention.
Yeah.
And like you said, if there's that joy sucker in the room, that can spread to other people on the team.
Oh yeah.
And so you've really got to be mindful of the team dynamic.
Yeah, I in my work I talk about the genius jerk that is just really weighing down on everybody on the team, and you are what you allow as a leader, and if you allow that to continue to happen, that's what you're going to get. Bossy, let's do our first mentorship moment of the day. You've got a high achiever sitting in front of you right now who's done everything right. They've hit the goals, earned the promotions, and they're quietly burning out, running on fumes, wondering if it's all worth it. What's the conversation you have with this individual?
So the conversation is two-part, one about joy and one about accomplishments. And specifically, what we talked about a little bit earlier is the joy bubble. And so I encourage that person to go back and think about, what was it that drew me to this role in the first place? What got me excited about it? And then also to really start to journal and write down, when are the times that they have enjoyed the work? Because 9 times out of 10, they are going to have those moments, but because, whatever reason, we sometimes tend to focus more on the negative, so you have to be intentional about focusing on, what is it in my job that brings me joy, and why did I come here in the first place? So that's the first part, is the joy, and intentionally calling upon that in difficult times.
Yeah.
The second part is your accomplishments journal. I encourage everybody to do this at least once a month. I think Friday is the best time because the entire week has gone by. And before the weekend hits, reflect on what you've done. And I don't mean it has to be like, I just wrote a book. It could be, I decided that I'm going to write a book. It could be, I wrote a chapter in the book, right? You need to be celebrating these smaller wins along the journey. So when you keep an accomplishments journal, you start to see the overlap between those accomplishments, which essentially are your skills. And then you see an overlap between that and your joy. So the things in your joy bubble. So when you use those two together, you become more confident in speaking about your accomplishments. You become more impressed with yourself, and you can share them without feeling, like you're braggadocious. You're just factual. And
Yeah.
that reignites your joy for the work and your drive.
Yeah. I in my forthcoming book, which I haven't told listeners a whole lot about yet, but the concept of self-love is a big part of my future writing, and I'm hearing a lot of connection to that concept. And self-love as a skill is what I'll be talking about a lot. So we can't bring the best of ourselves into the workplace and our relationships if we don't like what's going on in here. So connecting to those moments of joy and that accomplishments journal, even if it's the world just fell apart around me, but I took the first step forward after it all fell apart. Accomplishment. Check.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And so I'll remind listeners of this. The joy bubble reminds you of why you're doing the work, while
Yep.
the accomplishments journal reminds you that you are actually doing the work and executing it. So that's
Excellent.
why they go powerfully together.
Great. Now, second mentorship moment. Picture a team leader they bought into your message, and they want to bring more joy into their team, but they're worried that it'll be labeled gimmicky or soft. And this is the whole soft skills argument, right? And it won't be taken seriously. How do you coach them to introduce joy in a way that's really credible and is going to stick with the team?
Well, Andy, this is a really important factor because I look at it when I come in to work with a team is I'm a partner with you. And so I love it when people ask me this question because I can work with them from a coaching perspective to give them the language. So the first thing is the language. You don't go to your leader and say, I want to bring joy in. Because if you
Yeah.
because, you already know that they're skeptical. Or if they're not skeptical, you can, but you as a leader should know the temperature in the room.
Yeah.
So instead, you want to start asking the team things that indicate joy levels. So like, what part of the work energizes you? When do you feel like you're doing your best work? Like how does this work feel meaningful to you? And so those are the joy questions, if you will. And they do sound like leadership questions because they are. True leaders lead from a place of not only their own joy, but understanding the team's joy so that they're making the right moves. So joy doesn't have to announce itself in order to be able to do the work. So that's the first thing is the language. The second thing is you need to connect joy to outcomes. So going back to those data points that I shared, it's being able to equip leaders that want to bring me in with those data points so that they can make the business case. So you don't say, I want you to enjoy this. You do say, I want us to build something we're proud of together that reflects the talents of our team. And so that's when you think of it, that's joy with a spine, and that's joy that's results driven, and that's joy that can be respected. And then the last nugget that I will give them to support them building the business case for joy is the 3 C's of joyful living. You need to model it yourself. And so rather than just saying we need to do this, they need to embrace and model it. And when they model it, they use what I call the 3 C's of joyful living. They celebrate their own wins so that people see it's okay to be excited whenever you accomplish things. You cheer for others' success because you want them to be cheering for you as well. And you do it in a way that's meaningful to them. And then you connect with your community. And so that means you're connecting cross functionally, you're connecting externally so that there is light shown on the company and its reputation. So, as a leader, you need to use the right language, you need to model it for yourself. And that is how you build the business case for joy and bringing someone like me in to amplify it on a long term basis.
That's awesome. As you're talking, I'm still back on the joy bubble, and I'm thinking of it like a force field, right? You see the sci-fi movies, and there's a bubble created around the main character, and all the evil like can't get in, and it bounces off. And I can imagine my joy bubble expanding, getting stronger and stronger until it's just glowing, right? We could make a movie about this, but that's how my mind is thinking about. Am I wrong?
I think you're absolutely on point, Andy. And the reason is because I heard you saying it's expanding. And the word that I love the most is force field. And that's exactly what it is because joy then can become your defense in difficult times.
Yeah.
The more that you understand your joy, the more that you know your joy, the more you can call upon it in those difficult times. And like you said, it becomes that force field to protect you.
Yeah. I'm I want listeners are going to see this show and they're going to go, wow, they talked for over 30 minutes about joy. Wow, there must be really something there.
Yeah,
But
290 pages in this book, Andy.
yeah, it's a really important subject. And I just want to, I can't stress enough for listeners, the seriousness about this subject. Bossy and I are having a lot of fun today because we really connect on this topic. But this is serious business. It impacts the numbers. It impacts retention. All the things that Bossy has talked about that are real and applicable to your business. So, Bossy, I want to give you an opportunity to let our listeners know how they can get a hold of you. How can they get a hold of the book?
Definitely. So the book is available on my website, goalandgrind.com. That's my company's name. And when you see it available on the website, it will point you to any of your favorite places where you want to buy books. So whether you want to buy them from Amazon, your local bookstore, or request it at your library, it's available to you. And then if you want to get in contact with me, I am on LinkedIn at Bose Akadiri. And then I'm also on Instagram at Goal and Grind, my company's name. And I am always happy. I run my own account, so I'm always happy to respond to any questions that you have. And if you do want to bring me in for your team, I'm happy to work with you and coach you on the language to make that happen.
Excellent. Boy, I really Wisconsined your last name, and I did Akadiri.
I didn't even notice. To me,
It's a
it was
very,
the same.
it's so Wisconsin. Oh my goodness. Every now and then it just, I hear myself talk, and yes, we do have an accent in Wisconsin.
Well, we have
Uh,
one in Oklahoma too, and every once in a while, I'm like, "Oh, where
yeah,
did that come from?"
awesome. Hey, Bossy, let's have some fun with some really quick lightning round questions, shall we?
Yes, let's
Uh,
go. Give
All
them to me.
right. Bossy, you've just won a $100 million lotto jackpot, but there's a stipulation that half of your net winnings go to one philanthropic organization or a general cause. Who do you pick?
Okay. So because I was in corporate philanthropy for so long, I can't name a name, but I give to organizations that are either doing financial literacy
Hmm.
or education and mentorship for girls. That's where I
Awesome. Yay.
go.
I'm on the board of the Boys and Girls Club of Greater La Crosse, and I mean they just built a workforce development. They do everything from youth sports to workforce development to mental health. Such an awesome organization, and I'm sure you're thinking about similar organizations.
Exactly.
So, Bossy, I give you access to a really little time machine, and you can send a message to an earlier version of yourself. What's the message, and what previous version do you send it to?
So I would send it to high school version of me, and I would tell her that the exact thing you're being bullied for, which is like my uniqueness, I was very different. That's the exact thing that's going to open doors for you in the future. So
Yeah,
just stay true to yourself, your curiosity, your wisdom, your love of people, and you can't go wrong.
yeah, yeah. That's awesome. Bossy, we are all works in progress. What are you focused on right now in your personal journey of growth?
All right, Andy, a moment of vulnerability because you asked the
Please.
question, but I am focused on making room for a romantic partnership.
Well, awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome. Joy and love, they do go together, don't they?
They do. They do.
All right. Bossy, it has been an absolute pleasure meeting you and talking to you today. I'm so thrilled that we got introduced to one another. So thank you so much for your contributions.
Thank you for having me, Andy. I really enjoyed this and I appreciate the opportunity. You're doing amazing things in the world.
Oh, thank you. Well, my name is Andy Temte, and this is the Balancing Act podcast. You can find the show on all the major streaming services as well as out on YouTube. Please like, subscribe, rate, and most importantly, share this public educational good with your friends, your family, your colleagues, and maybe a neighbor. The show is produced by Nicholas Temte. We will see you next time on The Balancing Act.